Remove the tire, 21mm socket. When removing the caliper, we have a caliper and a caliper bracket. Remove the caliper from the bracket first. Two 14mm wrenches. So 14 on the outside and 14 holds this slider pin. Break these free, take them completely out. You'll see this bolt comes right out. Do the same on the bottom. Take the bolts, set them aside. And then you can just grab that caliper and lift it right up. Make sure it doesn't hang from the hose, just set it aside. Two bolts hold the bracket onto the knuckle, and that is a 17mm socket. Break that free. Break them both free before you take the bolt completely out. Yes, this is a new caliper, but the reason I'm showing you is the way to do it, because the old caliper was seized up. So it was impossible for me to show you how to clean one and reassemble it. I'm going to pre-spray where the rotor meets the hub, and we're going to use the bolts. Toyota has 2 threaded holes so that you can pull the rotor off evenly. These are 8 by 125, so 8mm by 125 bolts. Just hand start them. 13mm socket, and just go back and forth evenly, and it'll pull the hat right off. You want to take a wire brush and you want to clean the hub up so the new rotor has a flat surface to mount on. Make sure you get around the wheel studs and close to that center of that hub and get any high surface rust off. I like to spray some anti-seize on the hub so it doesn't get frozen in the future. And you can put your new rotor right on. So this is the old caliper bracket, and these are the old tins. See how the rust forms underneath here and on this surface? If this caliper had good sliders and they weren't frozen and we were going to reuse it, this is a good reason why the boot is destroyed. So water gets in there and seizes up the slider. So you cannot reuse that. But if you were to, you have to clean this surface up with a wire brush or what we call a little whizzer grinder. And then you're going to put the new hardware with some caliper grease on it. So just like this. Take the pads off, set them aside. So clean it up with a wire brush, get as clean as you can. And then the pads come with new tins. That's what we call this tins hardware. And you can put caliper grease right underneath, just like that. I do not prefer to put it on the top. Some people do. It's personal preference. But I like a nice clean surface for the pads to slide on. And if you put a little bit of grease on there, you can say I just put a light coat, but dirt gets attracted to grease and gets stuck on there. So I personally do not recommend it. So get your caliper grease, load up the slider. And then make sure you get some good amount of grease on the inside of that boot. You want the grease to sit inside so in the future it'll lube the pin up as it slides back and forth. Do this to both sides. Slide it down, squeeze it, let the air out. Do the same on that. So now I'm going to mount the new bracket on the knuckle part. Put my 2 bolts in. Start it by hand. That's a 17mm socket. We're going to bottom them out, and then we're going to torque it to the factory specs. So once the bolts are flush with the mount, it's 65 foot-pounds from caliper bracket to knuckle. So here are your two pads. Rotor is going in this direction, so you always want to put the indicators on the first section of the pad that hits the rotor in the direction it's rotating. So they're going to go on the bottom, and to put those on, there's that little pin right in there, and there's a notch on the pad. So line it up, push it down. So this one's going to go this way. And the inner one is going to go like that. So we're going to put the indicator on the bottom, just like the other side, and do the same on this. Now we're ready to mount our caliper. Now you can reattach the caliper onto the bracket with the pads. .14mm, both on the slider pin and on the bolt. Just going to snug it because I'm going to end up torquing it to the manufacturer's specifications. So once you snug both, so 14mm socket, and the torque is 20 foot-pounds. Now we can put our tire back on. Start them all by hand, and then we'll tighten these up in a star pattern. Then torque them to manufacturer's specifications. Tighten to 76 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Double check. So on this actual vehicle, I need a little funnel. Make sure it's clean of any debris or oils, and then top off your brake fluid. Make sure you replace the cap all the way down, seated properly. With your car in park, pump the brakes several times, start it up, and make sure you get a nice firm brake pedal and it doesn't sink down. Good to go.